Hello, I'm Venita Blackburn, Assistant Professor of Fiction and Thesis Committee Chair for Yia Lee. As a writer, I'm always observing humanity, looking for quirks and patterns, reasons for behaviors that make us make sense, that offer some kind of comfort in our mission to understand ourselves and predict our future amidst circumstances that can feel chaotic. When I first met Yia in a graduate fiction workshop a couple of years ago or so, I expected her work to reflect a little of the woman I saw. I expected her work to be something joyful, insightful, and calm. But if you asked Yia to explain what her own work is about, I suspect she'll say a lot of dead people and laugh. I was surprised to read the subjects of Yia's work, actually, how deftly she goes into the darkest parts of human habits towards suffering and the heartbreaking journey out of that place. Of course, her work is more than dead people. She writes about war, Hmong culture, girlhood, and youth, all marching about in a world suffocating under brutal violence, both to the body and the soul. Her prose reads like an aged fortune teller, a voice wise, elegant, and hilarious. With wisdom comes a keen sense of spotting not just the beauty of life, but also the ridiculous, an ability to laugh while we scream and recognize that all of these states of us are life, and all of it must be named in order to recognize our value, our purpose, and truth. If I were to briefly channel the fortune teller voice of Yia, I predict her work would be and will be welcomed by the world as a celebration and indictment of who we are, who we have been, and who we will become.
Hi, Nyajong. Thank you everyone for watching my reading. First of all, I would like to say my thanks, and I have a lot of people to thank. So I have spent a busy and amazing 3 years in the Fresno State MFA program. I've learned so many things and met so many fantastic people. So I would not be where I am here without the help of these people, professors just Kathara, Stephen Church, my Dervang for starters. My Dervang is also on my thesis committee, so huge thanks to her. A big thanks to Venita Blackburn, who is my amazing thesis chair. I would also like to thank Jefferson Beavers. He's always been so incredibly supportive and encouraging. I wish to thank all my peers who have helped me out in workshops over the years. Your feedback has always helped me, and you are part of my thesis too. Um, to my friends New and Jur, you both are amazing people, and I adore you both. Lee and Gao and Tony, also incredible people I've met here at Fresno State. You guys are so amazing. Um, and finally, I would not have come to the NFA program if it were not for the Hmong American Writers Circle. So poets like Sol Ving and Andre Yang. And also thank you to Andre for being one of my thesis readers. Both of them really pushed me to grow as a writer over the years when I was lost and I didn't really know what I was doing. And you guys really inspired me to go on ahead and apply to the MFA here. So thank you. Um, và xin ho cụ xã hai wat cho cụ xã hai cho cụ chế nên cụ nia giá so theo cụ phí nhất thọ lì theo cụ chọn lính dầu theo chọn nữ wat trong tàu cụ lưu này sở đại khen wat cho do chỉ mua này chế cụ chỉ bao cụ yếu wat chi ở cụ kia cho này bí sống thâu lò hay kia cụ xã mu cần tới đua mu tại cụ đàn masters này bé hay kia trong cơ chỉ thoát thơ chỉ thoát ổn hoa xia cái mà bác có cụ trong xia xuống này tàn cho. All right, so that's the end of my thanks. Before I begin reading from my excerpts, let me set up some context about my thesis manuscript. So this is a historical fiction fantasy novel set in Laos during the time of the Vietnam War. So as the Vietnam War was going on in Vietnam, next to it, in neighboring Laos, they were fighting their own civil war. And in this setting and in this time, my three main characters are Miney, who is a young Hmong woman who has recently died, and she came back to life. Well, she came back to Earth as a Fanzong, which is a kind of a female ghost from Hmong folklore. With her is a magic spirit tiger or a magic tiger. He's also a character in Hmong folklore. And there's also a little orphan boy, just a small little Hmong boy who's an orphan, and they're all traveling through the jungle to hide, to find safety as the war spreads across the region, as the war grows worse. So from time to time, they also encounter other humans hiding in the jungle as well, or fleeing through, because again, the war is spreading and displacing people. So in this novel, Tiger, he hates humans. He really can't stand them, but he can't always keep clear of them as he's leading Miney and the little boy through the jungle. And they have encountered other humans before too. And the encounter is always kind of traumatic. And just before this scene that I'm going to read, Miney has just had a huge shock. She's had some really bad news about the war, and she's in deep, deep, deep despair. So in this particular scene, they encounter an old woman who has been left behind to die because she can't keep up with her family. The next morning, Tiger led them southwest. Miney was too subdued to ask, but she guessed it was to avoid any more hints of humans and their trails. In the afternoon, they reached a small clearing in the jungle, and Tiger jerked to a halt. The boy edged around him to look. Miney drifted in their wake. Today, she was barely aware of her surroundings, alternating between sorrow, self-pity, and numbness. She hoped the numbness would win out. She was very tired. There was only so much a soul could contain before she went mad. She realized that Tiger and the boy were whispering urgently and summoned the energy to look about. An elderly woman napped nearby, alone, propped up against a tree. Her head lolled to the left. The wrinkles on her face carved deep grooves of shadows and light, so textured that her forehead, cheeks, chin matched the rough bark of the tree she rested against. Miney raised her eyebrows, surprised enough to shake off her depression for the moment. Then despair returned with a vengeance. As if they could sense the presence of death, a small cloud of shiny black flies buzzed around the old woman's face, her torso, her outstretched legs. Miney watched a dark speck land and crawl like a slow bead of water down the ridge of the old woman's nose. Are there other humans nearby, Tiger? The boy's voice was soft. No. What are we going to do with her? Well, achoo! The old woman sneezed. Miney jumped and let out a yelp. The fly on the old woman's nose buzzed away, as did the other flies hovering near her face. Miney was so relieved she burst out with laughter. She pushed past the boy and Tiger, right up to the old woman. She waved away the small cloud of flies. It is not right, she thought. The flesh is not dead yet. Why is death so greedy? Her arms jerked faster in wild sweeps. This close, she noticed that the old woman's face was covered in a thin layer of perspiration. Her breathing was soft and slow, and her eyelids trembled. The flies had been attracted to her sweat. Did they leave her to die? How long has she been here? The boy's voice rose up. Tiger was saying to him, hush, hush, and Miney tuned them out. She focused on keeping the flies away from the old woman's face. She almost jumped and screamed again when the old woman spoke in a low, raspy voice. Daughter, is that you? The old woman opened her eyes, and Miney stared into a pair of watery white orbs. The old woman was blind, and old and feeble. She would have been a burden to her people fleeing from the war. Those unseeing eyes closed, and the old woman fell silent again. But for some reason, now that she had spoken, Miney felt obliged to reply. She said gently, yes, I came back for you, grandmother. She did not expect to hear anything else, but the old woman whispered, I am just so tired. I know, said Miney. Don't worry, I will watch over you while you rest. It is just a small illness, said the old woman. I am sorry to be so difficult. Mimey wanted to get up and kick the nearest tree that didn't have an old helpless woman leaning against it. Do you have any food? The old woman said. No, grandmother, I am sorry. I do, said the boy. He pushed past Tiger and stood next to Mimey. He leaned over the old woman, a handful of half-dried, wrinkled berries in his palm. He slipped one between the woman's lips. She chewed and swallowed. Oh, grandson, you are here too. I am grateful. Perhaps she was feeble not only in body, but also in the mind. Or perhaps, as she was so ill, the fever muddled her way of thinking. The boy fed the old woman a few more berries, but she turned her head away after a moment. Save the rest for yourself, child, she said. The boy looked like he wanted to force feed the rest of the berries to the old woman, but Miney shook her head. The illness had probably suppressed her appetite, and in any case, Miney recognized that a handful of berries was not going to make a difference. The old woman was not going to survive. For a horrible, endless minute, Miney wished that they had never come this way, and that she had never approached the woman. She wished that this person before her had remained unknown and unaccounted for. How much more suffering and death could Miney encounter and endure? It wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and Miney was going to go insane. You should not have come back, though, the old woman said after a long moment. They were right to leave me behind. I will only slow you down, even if I become well again. Don't speak like that, said the boy. Oh, grandson, said the old woman. In a soft murmur, with uneven fits and starts, she began addressing the rest of her family. She was hallucinating. She spoke in fragments to her children, her grandchildren, her in-laws. Miney felt like she was being wrenched into pieces. Unable to bear it, she said, Hush, hush, please. The old woman must have heard the tears in her voice. Don't weep for me, daughter. I know it is too late. The only travels I will take now belongs to my souls. Souls? Travels? Said the boy. Behind her, Miney heard Tiger hush-shushing the boy. Little grandbaby boy, you don't pay attention, do you? Let Grandma teach you one more story before I go. The body has many souls to it. These souls are one and the same, but they leave the body after death and go to the meaningful places of their old life. One soul visits the place of birth, another soul goes to the place of burial, and so on. Most importantly, one soul travels to the great river of the afterlife. I know this story, whispered the boy, but this time the grandmother did not hear him. She continued on. Once this soul crosses the river with its former life washed away, it will meet the ancestors with great joy and peace. After a time of rest, the soul will reincarnate onto earth again. Reincarnate, said the boy. Human souls are not meant to end, you see. Who you are now will not be who you are 1,000 years from now. You will carry life again and again and die again and again. You are everlasting. Don't forget my words, grandson. The old woman leaned her head back against the tree trunk after that and fell silent. Her breathing became more shallow and uneven from the exertion of speaking out loud. Miney waved away more flies and looked at Tiger. He had been still and silent throughout, like a strange orange statue with amber gems for eyes, not calm but alert, and not patient, because now he got up with restless energy and shook his head, saying, We must move on. There is no more we can do for her. He sounded unhappy, but his voice was firm. The boy shot him a look of outrage. It was cruel to leave an old sick woman to die alone. But Miney knew that Tiger was right. They could not linger behind for every lost person they came across. In fact, to be practical and to look after their own survival, they should have just passed the old woman by. Tiger caught the boy between his jaws and forcibly dragged him away. Miney followed, but she looked back over her shoulder at the still figure under the tree, getting smaller and smaller with distance. She was so sorry. No one deserved to be left to die alone, and twice at that. Abandoned once by her people, and then again by Miney's motley group. The elders should be revered, but it was all backwards now. Being old and sick meant you were a burden, not a resource to be treated gently. Age was a weakness, not a valued commodity. Here was a woman who had been a daughter, sister, mother, caregiver, and a provider for her family. She had spoken of them so lovingly. She had serviced her life for them. Even now, she had shared a story with the boy, a final gift from her to the next generation. But her people had left her behind. The war had caused people to sacrifice many things, including the better of societal values, large chunks of their humanity, any last trace of softness in the heart. And Miney understood. She herself could do no better. She turned away from the old grandmother and the black flies that circled her around like devoted attendants, waiting and waiting to feast. Thank you so much for watching my reading, and I hope you guys have a great evening. Bye.